Distinguished guests, colleagues, and peace builders joining us from around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in these time zones. It's my honor to welcome you to the inaugural episode of the webinar series Resolving the Rohingya Crisis, the Alternative Plan for Peacebuilding, organized by our institute, Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada. Before we begin, traditionally, we do treaty recognition. The Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada, is located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Iniwak, Anisiniwak, Dakota, Oeti, and Dene, and the national homeland of the Red River Metis. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. The audience. This webinar marks the beginning of an important journey under the umbrella of Project Charting a Lasting Peace in Myanmar, Ending Decades Long Armed Conflict, a timely initiative funded by Global Affairs Canada through its Indo Pacific strategy and officially launched on March 17 of this year. The project's overarching goal is to explore and establish alternative, inclusive, and sustainable approaches to peace building in Myanmar, approaches that are rooted in dialogue, grounded in local contexts, and attuned to the structural complexities of long term armed conflict. The audience. Let me take a moment to outline the two-phase structure of this initiative that we just spoke about. In phase one, in our project, it centers on identifying feasible pathways to peace through constructive dialogue, collaborative knowledge building, and grassroots engagement, which is technically research on the existing peace treaties, and also to find out peace building approaches using track to diplomacy and through Marshall Plan. Phase two is the advancing the institutional collaboration, aiming to translate insights into political alternatives that can mitigate violence, enable return, and promote just governance in post-conflict Myanmar. Given the multitude of urgent crises facing the world today, from Gaza to Ukraine, from the Sahel to Haiti, one might ask, why focus on Myanmar? The answer lies in the magnitude of human suffering, the protracted nature of the conflict, and the systematic international neglect this crisis has received. Since the intensification of military operation in 2017, now approximately 1.3 million people are Rohingya people are being hosted in Bangladesh. According to the international report, at least 24,000 Rohingyas have been killed due to the military operations, while thousands more have been subjected to state directed violence, including rape, torture, and burning of their villages. But the suffering does not end here. The Rohingyas are not only the victims of Myanmar's internal wars. The ongoing civil war following the 2021 military coup has displaced over 2.5 million people nationwide, cutting across ethnic, religious, and political lines. These include Kachins, Shans, Karens, and Chins, entire communities waiting for the day they can return to their homes, rebuild their lives, and reclaim their dignity. For host countries like Bangladesh, this crisis has escalated from a humanitarian concern to a strategic challenge, straining the national economy, intensifying diplomatic tensions, and putting pressure on already fragile ecosystems. Countries in the broader Indo Pacific arc are also affected either through refugee flows, transnational militancy, or disrupted trade and security arrangements. Compounding these issues are geopolitical constraints. The Myanmar crisis is not merely a domestic nature, it is entangled in regional power dynamics. The interests of China, India, ASEAN states, and Western powers intersect and at times conflict, making unified action difficult and muting calls for justice and accountability. This is precisely why Canada's Indo Pacific strategy is so significant. It seeks not only to expand trade and security partnerships, but also to promote regional peace and democratic resilience. Through this lens, the current project serves as a cornerstone of Canada's constructive engagement with ASEAN, recognizing that long term peace in Myanmar is essential to regional stability, human security, and in the eyes of international law. The audience. At Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada, our mission is to reframe these entrenched problems by mobilizing research, civil society, diaspora voices, and local communities to create alternative solutions, ones that are not imposed from above but emerge from within. To help us begin this crucial conversation, we are deeply honored to have with us today Professor Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, an eminent scholar and thought leader on South Asian politics and forced migration. Dr. Ahmed is the executive director of the Center for Alternatives Bangladesh and a retired professor of international relations at the University of Dhaka. He is also an adjunct professor at Taylor's University, Malaysia. He has co-authored, and edited 57 books, 22 monographs, published 129 research papers in leading national and international journals, and edited volumes. His recent publications are the following books: Rights, Rivers, and the Quest for Water Commons, The Case of Bangladesh, Rohingyas in Myanmar and Bangladesh, The Violence Protection, Dialectic and Narratives of Certain Unsafety, Uncertainty, Safety, co authored with Professor Niloy Ranjan Biswas from Dhaka University. And finally, that is how we plan to do our today's webinar, is to listen to Professor Imtiaz's uninterrupted presentation. And then we are also very much honored here today to have with us David Newman, who is our founder advisor to the Institute. And I welcome on behalf of the Institute both the gentlemen, and we'll go shortly to listen to Professor Dr. Imtiaz. Professor, how are you doing, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Good to see you, David.
So we are going to start the presentation, the audience, as we discussed, and it is really interesting that Professor is absolutely ready with a number of slides, and we'll request Professor that if he allows us to hold these slides in our website, so that it becomes one of the cornerstones and elements in our knowledge hub. Thank you, Professor, for, I think he agrees. So without further ado, let's go back to the presentation, and it is up in the screen. Floor is yours, sir. You can go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Kausar, for this opportunity. Let me go straight to the presentation so that we can have some time for the Q&A. As Dr. Kausar mentioned, that it's an interesting project, I believe, and teaming with Kausar's center, and I believe some other centers in the region would also join this initiative. We recently also had a discussion on this at the UCL. They are also keen to join. So it seems that there are people and there are institutions who are already working on this particular issue, how to resolve the Rohingya crisis. If it comes, well, it has been there for years, but if you look at the recent one, with nearly 1 million people being thrown out of Myanmar, and we now have around 1.3 million people, or 1.3 million Rohingyas in Bangladesh, but there are altogether 19 countries where stateless Rohingyas are somehow living their life, remaining mostly stateless in all those 19 countries as well. So I think the time has come for us to see whether we can have a different pathway to look into this. I'm not against any other pathway, and I'll talk about that, some of the pathways that is already active. It just, you add one more to this peace building, which, for to make it easy, we are calling it the alternative plan. My presentation will be, there's 3 sections to my presentation. I will be looking at first to give you a sense, and the first section will be the prevailing circumstances. If you can get some sense of the prevailing circumstances, we then move to the nature of Myanmar state, and finally we'll be talking about the various pathways, including the alternative plan. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to the prevailing circumstances, the big one that we now have is the conflict between NUG, PDF versus Tatmadaw. This is an interesting conflict because, one, it is a conflict within the majority community. This is very important. And secondly, it's also very different this time. 20 years back, Aung San Suu Kyi's, party faced a similar situation where the military did not agree to the election results. At that time, even students supporting Aung San Suu Kyi went to the forest and wanted a violent path or a militant path, but then Aung San Suu Kyi prevailed over them and went for non-violence. And probably that was the reason why she ended up getting a peace prize. But this time it's different. This time, Aung San Suu Kyi's party. Now we really don't know whether Aung San Suu Kyi agrees to the policy or not. She is interned, as you know, but almost one can say with some certainty that she is behind this time, and the militant part of NUG PDF. So now they have a militant wing altogether, and it's in conflict with Tatmadaw. That means that the majority community got divided. This one has to keep at the back of our mind as we move and try to understand the prevailing circumstances. Next, the second conflict is, and this is also because of the first slide, the first, the point that I was making in the first slide, the conflict between the majority community also contributed to a situation where the ethnic armed organizations took advantage to increase their power, and so they also have a conflict with Tatmadaw. Uh, Keep in mind that out of 135 ethnic armed organization, 135 ethnic communities, several of them have a big military structure, if you can say, or security structure, and some of them really are quite big in that sense. And so you have two layers of conflict. One, at one level you have the Tatmadaw versus NUG PDF, and a second level you have the ethnic armed organizations versus Tatmadaw. So there are two layers, and this is an interesting one because uh, it makes the whole situation very complex. So the complexity, you cannot throw away the Myanmar, and I will talk about why uh, what are the implications of that. But keep in mind the two layers of the conflict. Next slide, please. Now, interestingly, several years back, I think, if I'm not wrong, 3-4 years back, the Tatmadaw came to an agreement with Three Brotherhood Alliance with China's mediation. This related mainly with e-gambling. There was a lot of e-gambling in the China-Myanmar border, and so three uh, militant groups, which included Arakan Army as well, they got together and they came with an agreement. The agreement mainly was to shift the e-gambling from China Myanmar border to Myanmar Thai border. They did not succeed in dismantling everything. The return from that e-gambling is very high. So it got shifted because the Chinese population inside China were also getting infected, and that bothered Beijing, and so they came hard upon Myanmar and also the different militant organizations and impressed upon them to have this agreement. Keep in mind, most of the militant groups that we have, in order to reproduce itself, they somehow cannot do away with either it's e-gambling or narco trade. Uh, Now that there aren't too many global sponsors to support whatever their objectives are. Next slide, please. Now, on the top of this, we saw during the Biden administration, and I'll talk about the changes as well. The Biden administration were very keen on the Myanmar situation, and also on the Rohingya issue. And so they came out in 2021, the Burma Act, which gave the president actually the authority, if it wants, to make the whole act more flexible. In words, it's non-lethal support, but if the president wishes, it can interpret with some flexibility. So the Burma Act came out in 2021, which shows United States under Biden administration getting interested, of course, which also had immediate regional implications. Both China and India would definitely look at the Burma Act differently. But that was the policy. There has been some shifts, hopefully, and we'll talk about that in other slides. Next slide, please. One of the implications of the Burma Act, and as I said, that it gave discretionary authority to the President of the United States to interpret the act liberally, mainly when providing military aid to ethnic armed organizations. And one could see the impact of that with foreign fighters arriving in Myanmar. This almost, it parallels to what happened in Afghanistan. First, the foreign fighters, they enter. First, you have the legal, what you call, kind of shade, and then the foreign fighters enter, and then the intervention takes place. So it was almost going in that direction. At least some critics were pointing out, looking at the foreign fighters in Myanmar. The number is not huge, but since there were a couple of them, Al Jazeera made a report out of this, out of the foreign fighters. So it clearly showed that the United States was getting interested in many ways. Now, the foreign mercenaries is one critical step to understand where events can go. I think if you're familiar with the Ukraine situation, you'd also know the role of foreign fighters. Next slide, please. But increasingly, we see, I think, because of the cost, there's the emergence of local mercenary. And one outfit, Kukichin, could be one of the local mercenaries who were providing training to anyone who wants it. In exchange of money. As I said, you need money to reproduce your power or whatever your agenda is. So there were also emergence of local mercenaries in that region. The Kukichin is an interesting outfit because the population is spread in three countries, Myanmar, India, and Bangladesh. So they can operate with much more flexibility. And one could see not only the foreign mercenaries, but also the local mercenaries. And that was also giving some indication that things were really getting complicated in the Arakan region, or in that particular region. Next slide, please. And on the top of that, Biden administration also came up with a bipartisan act called the Rohingya Gap Act, the Genocide Accountability and Protection Act in July 2024. It is yet to be passed by the houses, but since it was tabled in July 24, it also clearly points out that what Biden administration's intentions were, and it looks like they wanted more engagement. I believe this is going to change, and we'll talk about that very soon. Next slide, please. And this is the change with Trump and the reshaping of U.S. war economy. As we can understand that he's very critical of the military-industrial complex. His members are also very critical of the military-industrial complex. Some of them have openly said that it's not going to be easy for them to change overnight. That is also very clear because the economy, U.S. economy is connected to the military industrial complex in a way that is very difficult to change overnight. This is something that way back President Eisenhower, also a military person, in his farewell speech actually pointed this out, and he actually coined the term military industrial complex, and was telling the United States and was telling the people of the United States that you have to be very careful with this military industrial complex, and it seems to have nobody gave attention to that. The other day, even Donald Trump was referring to President Eisenhower. So one can see that in order to make America great again, MAGA, they need to, reorient their economy in many ways from a military centric or military industrial complex to more infrastructure complex kind of thing. And that also tells you that their interest or Trump's interest on Myanmar would be very different from what it was with Biden administration. So this is overall the prevailing circumstances. It's just coming up. We are yet to hear from Trump about Rohingya or the Myanmar, but since he has literally put a stop to U.S. aid, which contributed quite a big amount to the Rohingya refugees, save life-saving, elements or components. The others were stopped, and that also tells you that his approach, or the United States approach to Rohingya issue or to Myanmar would be very different from what it was with Joe Biden. Next slide, please. Now let us move to the second part of my presentation, and that is the nature of the Myanmar state, because we need to understand the state in order to, if you want to really resolve the issue. Next slide, please. The international community somehow, and this is my position, did not understand what Myanmar state was all about. Myanmar state was never a Westphalian, classical Westphalian state with centralized sovereignty. It always had fragmented sovereignties. Out of 135 communities, 8 or 10 have proto-sovereignty, in the sense they have their own military, they have their own flags. 1 or 2 have their own currency also. So this fragmented sovereignty is a little bit similar to what we saw in Afghanistan. There are countries in the world which is fragmented sovereignties, but somehow we all think of Westphalian state, and I think this was the problem. We are not used to dealing with fragmented sovereignties, and this is something that has contributed to the complicity and not resolving the problem that we see in Myanmar and in the Arakan. Next slide, please. As if you look at some of the reports, 70% of the Arakan, there's de facto sovereignty with Arakan army in the Arakan. But keep in mind, yes, they have gained territory, no doubt about it. But the strategic posts are still with Tatmadaw. The ports, the airports, the highways, they are not under the control of the Arakan army yet. And more importantly, Arakan army has never declared his intention to become an independent country. This also you have to keep in mind, which means that today or tomorrow, Arakan army would sit with Tatmadaw or NUG PDF to negotiate. And so what is happening is, I think they are now in a position to bargain more for what I call hyper autonomy. I don't know where it will end, but it looks like they want greater autonomy, but not an independent state. They understand that that would create other problems. And as I said, Myanmar has always lived with as a fragmented sovereign with fragmented sovereignties. So for them, I think they know how to negotiate or how to handle uh, you know the relationship with other ethnic communities, including the Burman community. So keep in mind that yes, Arakan Army has a control of nearly 70%, but still, they're not into declaring it as independent country, and that creates problem because you need to negotiate, you know, with Arakan Army, of course, particularly in the case of Bangladesh, but at the same time you also need to keep your windows open towards NUG, PDF, and at the same time with Tatmadaw. Next slide, please. And now we come to the third part. The third and last part is the pathways repatriation. So the prevailing circumstances, I'm sure you can see the complexity and the nature of the state. That also is quite complex. If you keep that two parts together, then start looking into repatriation, then you can see that we need to come with different approaches in order to resolve this crisis. Next slide, please. The first pathway is a bilateral pathway. Bangladesh and Myanmar sat together. They signed a memorandum of arrangement back in November 2017, which I thought was very premature and not at all, from Bangladesh's side. I thought it was not professionally handled. And I say this because in 2017, this time, the observers and those who were looking into Myanmar, they were all, clear about that the Tatmadaw has committed a genocide. Now, when it comes to genocide, keep in mind, it's not the number of killing, it's the intention, the intent to destroy, intention. And, when you drive so many people out, the intent to, destroy is the intention is very clear. Somehow that was not taken into account by those who were then in charge. They hurriedly went to Nipido, which I thought was quite, not to, not at all diplomatic and not at all up to the mark. But later on, they tried to do some course correction. But anyway, series of bilateral meetings took place even during the pandemic, but nothing came about. As we speak, the bilateral approach has not really worked. Next, please. The second is the multilateral, where UNHCR also got involved, and they agreed with governments of Bangladesh and Myanmar that any repatriation must be safe, must be voluntary, safe, and dignified. The non-refoulement principle was put, as one of the critical element in the repatriation process. So no forcible repatriation. Multilateral approach also has not gone any far. It's still, they haven't made any, even if you take the repatriation, it has not worked. They have not made any headway. So pathway 1 and pathway 2 still there. In one way, it's alive. They are not dead, but that it has not. They have not produced any results. Next, please. There was an interesting pathway, and this is a tripartite pathway which China commissioned or initiated back in September 2019 during the UN General Assembly, sitting in the sideline. The three countries thought, or China thought, that it could prevail on Myanmar and do the necessary. They came out with a plan of of on the issue of repatriation. Even there were three phases to it. And the last phase was to look into the core, what you call the root cause, and that also allows you to think differently. But somehow it has not worked. Once or twice they tried with a pilot project, but somehow that also has not worked. The Chinese would always say that yes, they have very good relationship with Myanmar, but not to the extent of they can force upon Myanmar to take back the Rohingyas. So the tripart approach is an interesting one. But interestingly, it's only China which came out with a tripart approach. I was telling the Japanese and also the Indians, since they also have good relationship with Myanmar, why don't you also have a tripart approach? Japan in the beginning thought about it, but somehow it got fizzled out. And so China is the only country which has a tripartite approach. It's still on. It's still there. It has not worked, but it's not that they have not abandoned it. It's still there, but somehow the pathway 3 also we don't see any outcome. Next slide, please. The pathway 4 accountability has made quite a progress, but accountability is also a different ball game. It takes years, but it has made some progress in some of the things. Next slide. Uh, and one of the big development of the accountability approach was that the Rohingyas got recognition. The ICJ had two provisional judgments, or one provisional judgment and other to clarify the judgment or the submission of the Myanmar. In both the judgments, they pointed out that the people are Rohingyas, and that's the first legal recognition that a global or a world body has given to the Rohingyas. So I thought this was a big step. The second thing that I found that Myanmar submission, when Myanmar was submitting their case, not for once they pointed out that the Rohingyas are Bengalis, or they came from Bangladesh. Throughout their deliberation, they said that Rohingyas are Arakanese Muslims. This is interesting because there is a general perception that Myanmar sees the Rohingyas as Bangladeshis or illegal migrants, but that is not the case when Aung San Suu Kyi and her team was presenting their submission. Throughout they said Rohingya Arakan Muslim. The concept is problematic still because there are Rohingya Hindus and also a small number of Rohingya Christians. So all are not Muslims, but still one can see that the term Arakani Muslims were used. Now, what it means is that if they are Arakani Muslims, that means they are people of Arakan. Arakan is not in Bangladesh. So I don't know whether by default or by slip of whatever the words they were using, they also agree that the Rohingyas are from the Arakan. Next slide, please. The USA, during Biden administration, back in March 2020, they pointed out that the Myanmar military has committed genocide and crimes against humanity. So this is an interesting development. Nothing came out of it. A few sanctions, and but nothing important. Even with the Burma Act, they had to amend imports from Myanmar cannot be stopped. That was ensured. The original Burma Act draft had all those things. Kind of a sanction on all products but then the importers, I think, must have impressed upon Joe Biden's administration, and so that was withdrawn. So that means even on the issue of sanction, nothing serious has happened. Not to the point, the kind of sanction that Russia or Iran or even North Korea has faced. We don't see that that amount of sanctions in Myanmar, even when United States under Biden administration declared that Myanmar has committed genocide and crimes against humanity. Next slide, please. There has been one more development in this accountability, and this is the case that Rohingya have put in Argentina, and they came out with a verdict under universal jurisdiction, to go after some of the military leaders, including Aung San Suu Kyi. So it's an interesting development. At least it has a symbolic value, no doubt about it, and it also gives recognition to the Rohingya identity. Next slide, please. The fifth pathway is reimposing sanctions, and this will tell you that it has been half measured. Some sanctions on the military leaders, but they hardly go out. And then some of the countries have not joined. The important countries like India or Japan, even Australia, South Korea, they have not participated in this reimposing the sanctions. So this also has not really worked. Next slide, please. So in the background of all this, I come to the last section, and that's the alternative plan. And I need to begin with Sun Tzu and Albert Einstein, both of after centuries apart, though they came out and said that every crisis, is an opportunity. So we need to look at the opportunity. It's already 7 years. I think we need an out-of-box way to resolve the issue. As I said in the beginning, I'm not against any of the approaches. I think all approaches are fine, and I always use the octopus as an imagery. You need to have an octopus to resolve some of these problems, and my submission here is to add this alternative plan, and to see how we can work on this. Next slide, please. And this involves the economic incentives, what can be referred to as a mini Marshall Plan. Keep in mind that in Europe, the Marshall Plan has made a difference. The Germans and the French, they fought 3 great wars. They killed millions of people. But then finally they got together. And now you can hardly know, the two countries work together in a way which I think if Hitler was alive, probably would have committed suicide in any way. So the French and German have joined, even their embassy are together in Bangladesh under the same roof. But what matters here is, and nobody gives so much attention to that, is the Marshall Plan. I think the Marshall Plan made a difference. And the way the Marshall Plan was done was not to look into a particular community, but to look of whole of Europe. I think that made a difference. And so as whole of Europe developed, the conflicts also ceased. So something of that kind needs to be done. Now, this is interesting because the other day I saw even the Saudi Prince Turkey talking about Marshall Plan in Gaza. And I came to know the other day that even Canada institutes some. They have been also working on a Marshall Plan in Gaza. So that tells you that the idea of Marshall Plan is still alive. Of course, you have to do and cater it in different contexts differently. But I believe it merits attention. Now let's look into that, how it can be done when it comes to Myanmar. and Arakan. Next slide, please. I think one should start looking at investment opportunities in different areas. Now, I remember going to the camp and meeting the Rohingyas. I think it was in December, and I met very young Rohingyas, very bright, group, around 25 to 30. And one of the questions that I raised was, and I found that all of them want to go back to Myanmar, all of them, 100%. So I asked them, okay, after you go back, what would be your health policy? Have you thought about it? How many hospitals you will need? Where will the medicine come from? What will be the pharmaceutical companies? Uh, you know, and they said no, we haven't thought about it because one of the Rohingyas got up and said that when I said, what do you want to do in the future? He said, I want to go for higher studies. And I said, if you go for higher studies, which is fine, I have no problem with that, but what will be, what about your community? Immediately the others got up and said, no, we don't want to go anywhere. We want to work for the community. And then I came out with the question, do you have any plan done on the health? And what about agriculture policy? What kind of crops are you going to grow? Where are you going to get the fertilizers? Who is going to export? Have you thought about it? And do you have an agriculture policy? And the answer was no. And so I went on and on, what about education policy and how many schools you will need? Where will the teachers come from? Who is going to build the, whiteboard, or blackboard, whatever, and no. I said, somebody has to work on it, because everybody's talking about repatriation, which is fine. But if 1.1 million starts going back to Arakan, what about the next day when they wake up? What will be the health policy? Where will they go? It's 1.1 million people. It's not small number. 1.1 million means it's a larger population than Bhutan. Keep in mind, and of course, a larger population from several other countries in the world. But it's a big population. So we need to work on this: the agriculture, health, manufacturing. Next slides. Infrastructure, mining, education, and maybe one or two more. These are critical areas which will need attention immediately. So if you start working, I think, and of course, the Rohingya diaspora can also be involved. The process itself is very interesting because that will also tell you, some of the things. The root cause of the problem, I think, will come out from the exercise itself. Now, how do you go about doing it? Next slide, please. You need to foster multi-track diplomacy. Again, the octopus imagery has to be built. Track one, track two. You keep, whatever the tracks. It has to be out of box. You can't be at the track one level. The idea Marshall Plan, as you know, started before the war ended. Some of the papers and reports were done earlier. Even the reconstruction of Japan was done, several years before Japan collapsed. So, you need to start working on it quite early. You can't start with track one, and this is where I think CRIC, can contribute immensely, and other centers as well in working on the research. So the track two diplomacy, multi-track diplomacy. Next slide, please. That would require once you have the documents done, you need to interact, and I think 10 countries are very critical when it comes to Myanmar and Rohingya and the Arakan situation in the Arakan. Of course, Bangladesh, then China, India, Indonesia, also Japan, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, and the United States. These are the countries. I think one can also add Russia. Russia also has an interest relationship with Myanmar, but I believe this 8 or 10 countries would suffice, where you need to see, how how they can be convinced, and whether they can also contribute, or their investors can contribute to some of the areas that we were flagging. Uh, and I want to add Canada as an interesting country, which actually as almost objectively can invest in the research and help the other countries to build this idea of Marshall Plan further. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, once you have all the papers done and the calculation of the amount and all, then you start negotiating with Tatmadaw and the Arakan Army as well. Keep in mind that whatever solution we want, whatever international conference is being planned, you need to have the Myanmar in it. You cannot solve the problem without bringing them in, and so you need some incentives, because it's not unlike maybe they're not getting any benefit from the repatriation of the Rohingyas. Yes, the humanitarian issue is big, but to drive the humanitarian issue home is not easy. It's a long process. So you start negotiating with Tatmadaw, and here I think the civil military diplomacy is important, given that Tatmadaw is a military institution. They understand another country's military much more than the civilian outfit, and that can also make a difference. Next slide. You need to also negotiate with the ethnic armed organizations, including the Arakan Army. Now, this is very important. People are only referring in Bangladesh, I see, only referring to the Arakan Army. Well, yes, of course, you need to negotiate with the Arakan Army. And again, it cannot be at the track 1 level at this moment. But there are other tracks, track 2, track 3, and they can meet in different countries, in Kuala Lumpur, in Bangkok, in other countries. There are units of Arakan Army or friends of Arakan Army, and they can also take the whatever the idea is back to the headquarters. So you need an out of norm diplomacy, and you also need to talk with some other ethnic armed organizations as well, because they are connected. If you look at the Three Brotherhood Alliance, they all work together. So it's important to start negotiating with ethnic armed organizations, and there you need an out of norm diplomacy. I don't think the track 1 diplomacy will work in any way. Now I come to almost to the end. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the track 2 diplomacy, particularly with CRIC, and Kausar and myself and the team members have already started working on it. And the idea is to have 2 phases in the first component. Phase 1, we whatever I've been saying today, and whatever will be said in some of other presentations, we need to develop this into a concept paper, in a meaningful concept paper, and then take that to the understanding is to have a seminar in Canada in September 2025, so that we can have some other members join in and get their feedback of whatever we are doing. And of course, in the meantime, we also want to initiate FGDs in Bangladesh with 5 groups. Once we have the concept paper done, and once we have maybe before or after it gets vetted in CRIC's seminar, with policymakers, with diplomatic corps, media people also, and security officials, and of course the Rohingya diaspora and local Rohingyas as well. Now, once the phase 1 is done, we want to move to phase 2, because we need investors to join in, and this is critical. And this can happen with the 5 workshops that we are planning. It can be increased if other centers and other countries join in, but there's a plan in the pipeline, to have seminars in India, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore, and of course some other countries, whoever would show interest. And then take the whole lot, and this I refer only to CRIC's goals, to take that into what can be called as an Ottawa Summit 2026. How that will be planned still is open for discussion, and we can come back to that later, to give a sense of the whole of the work that we have done. And the process itself is interesting because as somebody was saying that even if nothing is if nothing even not happens, at least there will be publications. That's true. A lot of publications will come up, and of course people will be knowing each other. So this is next slide. Okay, next slide is just to say thank you. So this is the idea. Still working on it, and I believe with support from those who are listening to us, even in some in written form, would help. And of course, COSA centers and David is also on board. I believe we will be making a difference to this task of peace building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Imtiaz. Actually, it was such a comprehensive presentation, and I'm sure it is absolutely beneficial for our audience, for our funders, and those who are fellow peace builders. They have a very clear picture now what we are going to possibly achieve over the next 2 years. Thank you, Professor, on behalf of the Institute. Absolutely grateful. Folks, we are going to engage Professor Imtiaz and with a session of very short mini Q&A. And before I invite our founder advisor, David Gerald Newman, let me also let the audience know that CREEK is collaborating with Center for Alternatives, which is headed by Professor Imtiaz. And he is not only an eminent scholar in this area, but he is deeply involved in genocide studies as well. He led and founded a fantastic project in Bangladesh, and it was hosted by Dhaka University. So from both the angles, Professor Imtiaz is so well placed, and we are absolutely grateful to have him with us in this whole process. Professor, just bear with us for next couple of minutes as we engage you in a short Q&A. David, go ahead, sir. Floor is yours first.
Yeah, great presentation, but certainly stimulates a lot of questions. My background is for many, many years as a lawyer, but I was also in the legislature a period of time, and also in the executive branch of the government. And I had a lot of responsibilities for communities, because all of our northern communities, 80% of the geography of our huge province, was really within my responsibility. And within that area, we had 70,000 people, most of them indigenous. And that's where all the resources were. Okay. So here, my question really late, you didn't mention the Constitution, original, back in 1947, 2008, and so forth. So you didn't really give me a sense of a legal framework of all of this, and therefore within the state itself, the legal structure and the legal process role domestically. So I would like, in that context, to think about when you have the military structure they do there. I mean, is there any independent civil service that has any meritocracy? What is the role of the private sector there? What is the role of any local governments and their power? What is the role of women and families and all of this? And then I would have probably fit that. You gave, like, I think 6 tracks for diplomacy. and certainly government and the professional mediative kind of thing, the track two that we're talking about, you spoke of. But you didn't give any explanation really of the 3, 4, 5, and 6, whatever that is. So if you could clarify some of those things, so people like me with a legal background, and people like me with a government background, and people like me with a responsibilities for local governments and building local economies and community development, how this all fits in your 6 tracks and overall in relation to my questions and curiosity.
Thank you, David. I believe once we start the process, the first thing that will happen is you will be meeting the Rohingya diaspora, and there are a good number of them who interact with Myanmar or with their people back home. That will be the first step, I believe. But at the same time, you will also be meeting, since it is a economic incentive approach, you'll be meeting people of Myanmar in different places. The places that I mentioned, nowhere we are you're not you're not going to put the Myanmar citizens out of it. Rather, we'll welcome them or wherever they are, and that has happened in some of the meetings that I had in different places of the world. Even recently in Kuala Lumpur, where a conference on Myanmar and my little explanation of what this thing is all about. There were people, there were Rohingyas sitting down, but there were also Arakanis sitting down. There were also mainland Burman were sitting down there. So the process itself will, get you all these people together. What is happening now with all the pathways, which I'm not against any pathways. I think all pathways are fine. They should continue as in the direction that they have, and one doesn't cancel the other in any way. That's also we have to keep in mind. But this pathway, since it has a research component, the chances are that the Rohingya diaspora and also the Myanmar citizens, the Arakanis, they also would get involved, because they also need to know how many hospitals you need. Arakan army, whatever they are doing, if you come up and sit down with them, that look, we have worked on the health sector. These are things you need, and you can't have it overnight. And so the idea of a Marshall Plan is interesting, because you can reach for a win-win situation and then create the conditions for what you have pointed out, the legal side to it, of bringing an amendment or bringing a bill, whatever that is required to change or to include some of the things that will be done. Of course, the Constitution at this stage, negates the Rohingyas totally. But as I pointed out, if you look at their submission in ICJ, the ICJ's also the verdict, the provisional verdict that has come, they have recognized the Rohingya. And then the international community also, in some of the legal documents, if you take the Burma Act, talks about, yes, it's not a Myanmar Act, it's still a Burma Act, but they talk about Rohingya. So the identity has been built in an interesting way, which I don't think Myanmar can just rule it out totally. I think what needs to be done is Myanmar needs to see how they benefit in resolving this crisis. We have to keep in mind that not all countries want stability. There are countries which would want instability in the world, and they benefit from it. And Myanmar, Tatmadaw has been a classical institution which would want instability, because that is precisely how they thrive.
But how the stability is going to come from a central power, or it's going to come from a whole bunch of community powers? So
Exactly.
that was a great challenge. When I was Minister of Northern Affairs,
Mhm.
I had 47 communities that were really governments and development.
Mhm.
And the way we do local government is we have autonomous municipal governments, local
Mhm.
governments that elected
Mhm.
officials and so forth. In the communities, of course, that are in indigenous worlds,
Mhm.
uh, other than the imposed kinds of colonial systems imposed on them, the natural systems are, of course, tribal.
Mhm.
And they have their own ways of governing and relating to each other, coexisting and thriving. So are they going to have the freedom within the current situation to have any voice at all uh, during the process? But more importantly, of course, is there any realistic potential for them to have that sustainable empowerment to safely thrive as really the most important governments of all, local governments, in a situation where you've got centralized control, even a resistance to what I would call a federation?
Well, to answer that very quickly, it's a fluid state to begin with. Myanmar has not been a very hard state. It's a very fluid state, and you need to take advantage of that fluidity that we have not. Rather, we took Myanmar to be a hard state. That was the problem. But look, if you look at the 135 communities plus the Rohingyas, you can see how fluid that is. And so you need, and that's the reason I said you need an out of norm diplomacy. I don't think the classical way of doing diplomacy would work in Myanmar. So if you need to negotiate in Kuala Lumpur or in Delhi or somewhere, you have to do it. But the point is, will they be against this pathway? My hunch and the way I've traveled and I've talked so far, no. I've talked to the Rohingyas also, and they also see merit in that. And as I said, we are not canceling any of the other approaches. They can go on their own, no problem in that. You add to this and you start with the research so that you are well placed in negotiating with them that look, this is a plan that we have of investment and all. Yes, the Rohingyas would be, is a central part of this whole plan, and you benefit. You don't lose out of it. At this moment, they don't see. If I can understand a little bit, they don't see that if we repatriate them, they don't see what benefit they would have. So my point is, yes, we can push the humanitarian approach. I've no, I'm not against it at all. But whatever we do today or tomorrow, the consent has to come from the Arakan people, Arakanis, and Myanmar as a whole. We can't do something. We can't resolve it. Now, some of the things that you have mentioned, of getting, the communities engaged and all this. I believe, as I said, that since you will be interacting with both Rohingyas and non-Rohingyas of Myanmar in this process, whoever it is, and I believe we can also get them online, because this is an economic discussion. You want to talk about number of hospitals that Arakan would need or Myanmar would need. I don't think anybody is going to say, "Oh no, you can't talk about hospitals," or education system. Now, and I don't want to go, I don't want to jump because I think the process itself I find to be an interesting, and let the process handle some of the questions that you have raised. And I understand, those are important questions and have to be raised. The constitution has to come, the different communities, how the local governments would react to it, all this would come. But those are the things which I believe once we start with the process, all the seminars, all the FGDs, all the groups, including the Rohingyas, including other Myanmar ethnic communities. As I said, you need to interact even with other ethnic communities, if possible. When we have our meetings in Malaysia or in Bangkok, there are other groups, they can be also brought in. So after we all, maybe a year from now, I probably will be able to respond to your question in a much more, what you call, with confidence. But I see merit in the question that you've raised.
I just wanted to, before Kauser, I just wanted to say that this is all resonating with my own life experience and career experience, because my belief is that Canada is going through really a similar process to Myanmar. I mean, there's a commonality here, right? I think the beauty is that coming from Canada, we come in without any judgments or arrogance because we made our own mistakes. And so if the grassroots are allowed to become empowered, because they're going to benefit the people that are in power, right? I mean, everyone is going to be better off. And when you have empowered self-governing local people, limited self-governing within the state, everyone benefits. Every man, woman, and child benefits. So I see the Marshall Plan approach a good one. Kauser, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The audience, I think it is not very wise to add additional time to the discussion today, because it is almost past 1 hour that we are talking about our plan and project. So I would like to summarize and conclude this session. And first off, thank you very much, Professor Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, for his brilliant, and comprehensive understanding of the project itself. And his center is our collaborative partner down in Bangladesh. And also, David's questions are very introspective and very insightful, because these are some of the things we are going to possibly deal with in the future as we proceed in this project. The audience, we would like to conclude today. Thank you for being with us. I found a number of visitors and those who are still with us. Thank you so much for being with us. Please follow us in our social media links, and also we are going to update everything that we do in this project in our Knowledge Hub, and we have a website where you can also get all these updates. And finally, we are going to continue this kind of webinars where we can connect people from every part of the world. So if you're interested to contribute in this project, please write to us. We are always open to invite you to listen to your ideas. And from this project, definitely we'll get to some of the interesting solution of the Rohingya crisis. So thank you once again. Stay well wherever you are. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.